select streaming channels and then choose the category religious. Then you can find Imam Hussein TV from the list. Now choose add channel and then select OK. Done. Now you can find Imam Hussein TV in your home screen and watch all of our channels online.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. MashaAllah, we have reached the end of Ramadan. Not confirmed yet whether tomorrow is Eid or not, but inshallah it will be. And tonight will be our final show for this Ramadan series. I hope that you guys have enjoyed our discussions and have benefited thoroughly from the discussions and topics discussed. With me is Sheikh Ali Ma'ash. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you, Sheikhna?
Alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah, this is the final show. Thank you so much for being with us, and we really appreciate all your efforts and time that you've put into research into all the different Islamic law topics and into all answering the questions from the WhatsApp, the emails, and so forth, inshallah. Sheikh, I'm going to go straight into the questions. We were discussing Zakat al-Fitra yesterday and the day before. Considering that we are so close to Eid right now, let us discuss the actual Eid day, and let's start with the Eid prayer. But before that, right now we are in a situation, and you yourself included, and we were talking before the show as well, in regards to whether tomorrow is going to be Eid or not. So my first question is, Sheikhna, in a situation like this, where we're not sure whether it is the final day of Ramadan or it is the first day of Shawwal, is it mandatory to fast on this day?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. Yes, it is mandatory and wajib to fast this day particularly because you're not sure if it's the first day of Eid. You are still in Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan. So you must fast this day. If you were informed that on this day that you're fasting and you have doubts about this day, that today is Eid, let's say in the morning, in the afternoon, before the Maghrib in overall, then it becomes mandatory to break your fast. So mandatory and wajib to fast that day. If you don't know if it's first day of Shawwal or if it's the last day of Ramadan, you have to fast. But if you are told that it is now Eid, this day is Eid, then you must and mandatory to break the fast of that day. It's no longer in the month of Ramadan.
Sheikhna, when we look at the Eid prayer, it is one of the, you could say, is done early in the morning. It's one of the things we look forward to. Everybody dresses up, grooms themselves. Everyone's getting their haircuts. They're preparing for this prayer in congregation. Is this prayer actually mandatory? Do we have to pray this prayer?
The Salat al-Eid is mandatory in the presence of the Imam of the time, alayhi salam. When there is Imam, then the Salah becomes mandatory and wajib. However, in the time of occultation, of the ghaibah, this type of Salah becomes mustahab for the individual, either to pray it in congregation and jama'ah, or to pray it furada and by himself at home. There's no issue with it. So the hukam now, it's Salat al-Eidain is mustahab.
And Sheikhna, what time do we perform this Salah? Is it, is this, because we know we're specified times we have with other prayers. Mathalan, we have Fajr and that dawn, and midday we have Dhuhr, Asr, and evening at night, Maghrib, Isha. Where do we put this prayer in terms of our daily timing?
Yeah, the salah time begins from the sunrise of the Eid day, the 1st of Shawwal, till the midday. So you have this time of, 5-6 hours, this or more. You can perform the Salat. That's why we have multiple Salat of Eid, especially in the harams of Ma'asumin alayhi salam, or the mosques or centers. They begin from 7 o'clock in the morning till 11, just before Adhan al-Dhuhr.
I see. Ahsant. So between Fajr and Dhuhr time, that's the specified time to pray this prayer.
Sunrise till
sunrise. Okay. So when Fajr finishes, when Fajr becomes Qadha.
Yes, sunrise.
And also, this prayer, is it the same as a normal prayer in terms of, is there adhan and aqama? Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani Hafadullah, he has a discussion on this. What does he say?
Well, His Eminence mentions that there is no iqama or adhan in Salat al-Eidain. But the mu'adhin, the one who recites the adhan, would say as-salah, as-salah, as-salah 3 times in order to call and to make those who came to pray the Salat al-Eid know about that the time of Salah is now approached, so be ready for the Salah. So just 3 times as-salah would sufficient, and you don't have to do the adhan or the iqamah.
How should we perform the Salah? I mean, is it a 2 rakat, 3 rakat, 4 rakat? Is there anything special and different about this prayer compared to the other prayers that we have?
The Salatul Eid, basically, Eid al-Adha or Eid al-Fitr. Well, we begin with the Salatul Eid by, initially there are 2 rak'ah. On the first rak'ah, after the Hamd and Surah, the specific surah that can be recited.
Shams. I'm not sure Shams is one of them, yeah.
Shams or any short surah, that's fine in overall. But there is 5 qunut in the first rak'ah.
Yes.
So when the Hamd and Surah finishes, the one raises his hand towards the qunut, the face, and recites the dua. Allahumma ahl al-kibriya wal-'azama wa ahl al-judi wal-jabarut, till the end of the dua in each qunut.
I think every Muslim knows that dua because it's very, very long, mashallah, and it's repeated 5 times. But yes, you were saying qunut in the first rak'ah, qunut 5 times,
5 qunuts, exactly. 5 qunuts. So every time you finish the dua, you say Allahu Akbar, and then you go for the next qunut. So after the 5th qunut, and then you say Allahu Akbar, you go towards the ruku' and 2 sajda, of course. You get up for the next and second rak'ah. On the second rak'ah, of course, we have, in this case, 4 takbirat ihram or 4 qunuts. In other words, you do 4 qunuts, not 5 like the first one. Again, the same dua you recite. And then after the 4 qunuts, of course, you recite the takbirat ihram, and then you go towards the ruku' and sujood and tashahhud and salam, and you finish, inshallah. That's how we accept, inshallah.
Inshallah, we encourage all the brothers and sisters watching that please do perform this salah. It is a mustahab salah in the time of the imam, may Allah hasten his reappearance, and inshallah when we are with the imam, this salah will be wajib, so get the practice in, inshallah. Shaykhna, is that all that happens when we do the salah? We do the Eid prayer, but there's something after the Eid prayer as well, and it's normally a khutbah, 2 khutbahs normally after the Eid prayer, very similar to the khutbahs that we have on Jummah prayer. Is it the same khutbah? Is it the same style? Is it the same way, or is there something different about this khutbah on Eid?
I mean, they are similar to the Friday prayers, except that the 2 khutbah are recited after the Salat al-Eid, unlike the Salat al-Jum'ah or Friday prayers. So you recite the 2 khutbahs after Salat al-Eid when it's finished. So basically, people come on the day of the Eid. The mu'adhin calls as-salah, as-salah, as-salah. They line up, and they start to pray Salat al-Eid. As I've mentioned, 5 qunut in the first, 4 qunut in the second. They finish, and then the Imam stands, and he gives his first khutbah, his first sermon, and then he sits for a second, he stands up, and he gives his second sermon with regard to the Eid. So similar to the Friday prayers, but with the exception of the khutbahs would be at the end of the salah. Also, the one can go without the 2 khutbahs, so it's not wajib for him to sit and to listen to all the khutbah of the Eid. Even if he prayed in jama'ah, that's fine. So it's not really wajib in terms of this khutbah, because all salah is mustahab in all.
Shaykhna, we Shia, alhamdulillah, we have more than one Eid. The Eid prayer is well known for Eid al-Fitr and also Eid al-Adha. But what about other Eids that we have as well, especially Eid al-Ghadir, which is like known as one of the most important, one of the most celebrated, one of the most magnificent Eids that we have. Can we perform the Salat al-Eid on that day, on the Eid al-Ghadir?
Yes, Ayatollah Shirazi have mentioned that it is permissible for the one to perform Salat al-Eid on the day of Ghadir, this great Eid of Allah, Eid Allah al-Akbar, the grand Eid of Allah Azza wa Jal. So he says, yes, you can actually perform, and it's exactly the same as the Salah of the Eid al-Adha and Fitr. Again, the qunut, the 5 and the 4 qunut in both rak'ah, and then you have the khutbah, 2 khutbahs afterwards, and so forth. Exactly like the Salat al-Eidain. There's no issue with it. However, some of the ulama would argue about, are we allowed to have such salah? The one can go back to his own marja and to see if he would allow it, or what is the argument about.
Understood. Shaykhna, you mentioned that the Eid prayer is mustahab for now. What about the Friday salah that we have, the Jum'ah? Is that obligatory, and does it replace the Dhuhr salah if the criteria is met?
Well, today's fatwa is that Salat al-Jum'ah is wajib takhyiri. In other words, the one has 2 wajib in front of him to perform at least one of them. You've been given 2 choices. They're both wajib now, but if you pick one, then the other will be dropped.
Yes.
So if you pick Salat al-Jum'ah, you pray these 2 rak'ah of Salat al-Jum'ah with the khutbah, then you don't have to perform Salat al-Dhuhr, of course, with the conditions and criteria of Salat al-Jum'ah. Then of course you can leave Salat al-Dhuhr. Otherwise, you can stick with the Salat al-Dhuhr and do not do Salat al-Jum'ah. Also, you have given this option and choice. However, Ayatollah Shirazi would mention that if you had the chance to pray Salat al-Jum'ah, it's better to also pray afterwards Dhuhr as well. You can actually, you're allowed. So you can actually also pray Salat al-Dhuhr again.
I see. And when it comes to the Friday sermon and the Friday prayer, do we require permission from the religious authorities, such as, if it is like a council or a government or a marja? Do we need a permission in order to, perform the khutbah and to perform the Friday prayer?
No, you don't really need a permission from the marja or the authority, because in overall, basically, if you actually follow the mandatory criteria of the Salat al-Jum'ah, the distance and so forth, then that's fine. It should be, you can do your own Salat al-Jum'ah with the conditions that has to be met. That's fine. Otherwise, you don't need let's say, a fatwa or from the marja and so forth.
Shaykhwan, this one's really interesting because the next question, because as I was aware, when we pray Salat al-Dhuhr and Asr, we pray it silently, not with a loud voice. However, there's an exception on Friday, isn't there? Can you discuss with us a little bit on the ruling in audible recitation of Dhuhr prayer on a Friday?
You see, except the Dhuhr prayer on Friday. The rest of the days, the dhuhr must be with silence. You shouldn't show the words. However, for Salat on Friday, Salat al-Dhuhr is mustahab. As a mustahab precaution, it should be audible. So it's just the Salat al-Dhuhr. You can actually recite it audible on Salat al-Dhuhr, but still you can recite it, silently.
Okay, so if you recite it silent, there's no problem, but it is mustahab, it is better, it's recommended to
recite it on Friday audible, yeah.
Ahsantum, inshallah. Shaykhna, we have a question from the WhatsApp, and inshallah this is going to be our final question of today, and that is it allowed to marry someone again after getting divorced from him because he said something very bad to the Prophet, which is actually kufr? He was nervous while I was having an argument with him.
You see, you're allowed to, remarry, basically. You're allowed to remarry this individual. I know that sometimes people get in a bad temper and, they get angry and they start to shout and to curse and to actually, they start to use insultive language. They start to even swearing at some infallibles or na'udhu billah, prophets and so forth. Even some communities would swear at Allah Azza wa Jalla, na'udhu billah, astaghfirullah. It comes in such a nervous situation and time. Of course, we have to appreciate this situation. We shouldn't just incline towards using let's say divorce and other types of methods in which would break this bond between this family and causes us so much trouble. I mean, the best advice is to basically, number one, to ask Allah Azza wa Jal, invoke Him, go back to Allah Azza wa Jal through the dua, tawassul, and so forth. And also should ask and take the advice of the experts in this field, maybe the Maulana, the Alim, maybe physicians, I don't know, doctors, whoever can actually get involved and solve these issues. It could be a mental issue, It's the person who is swearing and insulting such a great religious personalities. This might be an individual who is actually in a mental problem and so forth, and psychological problem and so forth. So yes, best thing is to, number one, go back to Allah Azza wa Jal. Number two, to seek advice and help from the experts, and make sure that divorce should be the very last resort for the individual. Very important, because we don't want to make decisions in which they basically end up to be regretful and that we can't go back and return back to our previous life. So it's important that for the one uses his wisdom, his aql, intellect, in order to make the right decision.
Thank you very much, Shaykhna. Shaykhna, this is our final show. Those are all the questions. Before we sign off, would you like to say anything to the viewers, to the brothers and sisters?
Yes, there's a dua in Mafatih al-Janan by Sheikh Abbas Qumi rahmatullah alayh. He mentions the wada' shahr Ramadan, to bidding farewell, this dua for the bidding farewell for the month of Ramadan. He mentions this dua from the Kitab al-Kafi by al-Kulayni, from Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. I just mentioned parts of the dua. In this dua, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, for example, إن كان بقي علي ذنب لم تغفره. Oh Allah, if there's a sin that you haven't forgiven yet, and I'm still in this holy month, we are just possibly, could be the last day today, I don't know, Allah al-Alam. إن كان بقي علي ذنب لم تغفره لي أو تريد أن تعذبني عليه, or you want to punish me, Allah, you want to punish me on this sin, God forbid. أو تقايسني به أن يطلع فجر هذه الليلة أو يتسرم هذا الشهر. That's just by the time of the Fajr of this day, which is tomorrow, in the Fajr time, or by the end of the month of Ramadan today. إلا وقد غفرته لي يا أرحم الراحمين. Oh Allah, make sure that you have, or please, we ask Allah, please, to forgive me this sin that I might be punished for, to be deserving punishment. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal forgiveness even on such a last day of the holy month of Ramadan. In another part of the dua, he mentions سلام الله عليه وأن تجعل شهرنا هذا أعظم شهر رمضان مر علينا. Oh Allah, please make this Ramadan one of the greatest and best Ramadan that we have witnessed in our life. منذ أنزلتنا إلى الدنيا, since you brought us to this world, since we were, opened our eyes in this world, since our birth, to be this Ramadan, the best of the Ramadan had ever witnessed. And especially with this pandemic and isolation, I think things would be very different than the previous month of Ramadan, inshallah.
Definitely.
بركة في عصمة ديني, with the barakah, with the blessing of protecting my religion, وخلاص نفسي, and to خلاص, is it from ikhlas, or to save myself, وقضاء حوائجي, and to fulfill my needs, till the end of the dua. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, even in such time in which we are, welcoming the Eid and we're preparing for the Eid by buying gifts, sweets, and so forth, but still the dua is there on the last day of the month, tries to invoke Allah Azza wa Jal, to beseech Allah Azza wa Jal that, oh please Ya Allah, there's one more sin if I have that you haven't forgiven, please even forgive this sin which is remaining in my Sahifat al-A'mal. Make it clear, oh Ya Allah. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to hasten the reappearance for the Imam Az-Zaman Ajla Farajun Sharif, and to forgive our sins and to fulfill our needs. بحق محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Thank you so much, Sheikhna, for your time and for your efforts this month. Thank you to all the viewers for joining us. Inshallah, may you have a very memorious, a very happy and joyful, and a very Eid full of barakah and taqwa, inshallah. Thank you for joining us over this Ramadan period. If myself or the Sheikh have said something which you may have found offensive or you thought was inaccurate, please forgive us, for our shortcomings. It is not our intention to insult or offend or, to upset anybody on this show, but do understand that everything we say has got backing and research from different maraja. We speak to the officials, we speak to the representatives, and we speak to the official offices as well in regards with our research. So please keep that in mind. Inshallah, we'll be back 2 weeks time, inshallah, with a brand new season of Ahkam SOS, where we'll be discussing different topics, inshallah, as well as taking your questions via the WhatsApp, email, and inshallah the phone calls. Until then, have a blessed Eid. Don't eat too many sweets, and please remember us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Duty towards the preservation and the propagation of the message of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Indeed, one of the best ways to work towards the reappearance of Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallah Ta'ala Farajul Sharif is through promoting the values of Karbala. Imam Hussein Media Group is the only Shia television network that